Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Today is Wednesday, November the 10th, 2021, and I would like to thank you folks for being patient, considering there was no Kraken yesterday. Not because there wasn't any news, but because I was juggling a handful of different things pertaining to the show, and as many of you know, Camden is still recovering very strongly and quickly, I would say, considering, relative to what he had, a sinus infection. But again, just had to do a few things on my end and also resolve that audio issue. So I'd like to thank you folks so much for your patience. But anyways, let's dive right into it, because there is a lot to cover all around the world pertaining to whether it's COVID, whether it's, different military strategies, things like this. And again, in some cases, even certain social events or topics that are very widely controversial these days. So let's dive right into it. So first off, the judge in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial was screaming at the prosecutor, saying essentially, why did you present the information the way that you did in this case? And the judge very strongly seems to be siding with Kyle Rittenhouse. A lot of people tend to disagree with that. Again, I'm going to be honest with you folks. I stayed away from the whole Kyle Rittenhouse thing for months now. Not just with Kyle Rittenhouse, but with others in general. I've stayed away from it, to tell you the truth. And I say that because, not that it's not important. I do think it is important when situations like this to be able to have a conversation and go through the legal process of understanding and deciphering what's right and what's self-defense and what isn't. But I'll be honest with you folks, I've been so busy with the extraterrestrial, the paranormal, the whole, government cover-up sort of angle of things that I deliberately and consciously chose not to focus on the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. For me, folks, I gotta say, I personally, on a personal level, maybe some of you may not like this, just my opinion. I do believe that he should be found not guilty relative to the footage that I've seen. Now, if there's something out of context that I'm missing within this particular case, I'd be more than happy for you folks to enlighten me or fill me in. With that being said, though, again, it comes down to perspective. It's like, with what happened with the OJ case, or with so many other cases around the world, or even just within North America, or with even, for example, George Floyd, right? It's the same idea. You're going to have people that are not happy either way. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So that's why I don't like to spend too much time on it, because you can extrapolate so strongly and forever. It's like, what's the point, right? But I understand from a social perspective why this would be significant. The next thing is that Israel plans to hold war games tomorrow to, quote, prepare the country for the next coronavirus outbreak, end quote. The national operation is dubbed Omega Exercise, according to the Jerusalem Post. I gotta be consistent here. If the people are okay with it, then so be it. But again, the Israeli people, the people of Israel, I don't mean to exaggerate here. What are they on their fourth jab? I'm not kidding. Something like you got to prove that you were fully vaccinated plus your third or fourth booster shot to go anywhere. So again, a lot of people argue very strongly, not the Jewish people, but a lot of the Zionist mentality is derivative of that of the pharmaceutical industry and big pharma agenda. So we have to consider this, right? The next thing is that YouTube plans to hide dislike counts on all videos. They say the platform wants to curb creator harassment, they say, by hiding the dislike count. Recently, almost all videos published on the White House channel received far more dislikes than likes. I'm going to be honest, as someone that puts content out on YouTube, I want the dislikes. I want people to see when they disagree with me or disagree with the way I present information or something like this, more so than in other cases, right? Because I notice, right? I see when a video gets, 10 dislikes compared to 2 or 3. I want that feedback. I really do. With that being said, does it really bug me? It concerns me in the sense of, again, we let them take an inch, we give them an inch, they take a mile. I understand, technically speaking, YouTube's a private corporation. They could do what they want. So again, it doesn't directly affect me per se. From a social perspective, I really do think the dislikes should stay. Again, hopefully they bring them back, but I'm not keeping my hope too strong in that regard. The next thing is that 111 container ships are now floating off the California ports waiting to be unloaded, which is a new record. I'm going to leave that there. There's, deep connections to the members episodes and other things. I'm just going to leave that there. The next thing, take that as you will, right? It's not for me to say what we could make of this. We do know what's going on, well, allegedly, with the shortages and things like that, but holy crap. The next thing is that Durham target Igor Dichenko pleads not guilty on charges of making false statements to the FBI in the Trump-Russia probe. The trial is set for April 18th, 2022. Hey, when people are saying, where's Durham? Holy crap. It seems like, again, one arrest, okay, fine, whatever, but he seems to be moving. Let's see what happens. And I'm not saying that because personally I tend to lean a little more conservative with certain things, and I will be honest with you folks about that. But, let's see how it plays out, as we always say, and we will be following up on it. The next thing is that U.S. consumer price inflation has jumped 6.2% year over year in October, the largest increase since 1990. It would be 14% if the consumer price index were measured by the same metrics used by the government in 1980, analysts claim. We got to be consistent here. I don't know if there's one individual, one administration, one agency to blame. We could argue it's the whole corrupt, rotten banking apparatus, elite apparatus. I mean, a lot of people say, Trump flooded the stock market with cash last year or about a year and a half ago, just before COVID, and especially during COVID for inflated numbers and things like this to make the economy look good for the election. Again, I'm not saying that is fact. I'm saying that has been speculated and that's been observed very strongly in past months. We have to consider all these things, right? Whether it's Republican, Democrat. For me, it's not about that personally. It's for me, it's what human caused the rest of the other humans that they're supposed to be quote unquote governing to get even further down the rabbit hole in a shitty sense, like the debt hole, if you will. The next thing is that German creditor DMSA is preparing insolvency proceedings against Evergrande and invites other bond investors to join. Evergrande is on the brink of another formal default. There has been no word yet whether the Chinese real estate giant has met yesterday's $148 million payment deadline. Okay, again, they can do it. This could be like another Lehman Brothers moment, right? Let's see if the CCP, the government, the state government is going to bail them out, or I'm not sure how the system works compared to, for example, how things worked back in 2007 and 8 during the Wall Street, the housing crisis back in the States, right? So the next thing is that Germany's vaccination commission, STIKO or STIKO, now advises against Moderna for people under 30 years of age. This is my point, folks. Legitimate concern could be raised here in this regard, in the sense that, things take time to understand the side effects of. So again, I'm not trying to encourage people to get the vaccine, but I'm also not trying to discourage them. But from an attempted neutral stance I'm trying to take here, we look at this and we say, okay, what if I had gotten the Moderna vaccine, and I'm under 30? I fall right in there, and all of a sudden, they advise against it? You see what I'm saying here, folks? You see, why these legitimate concerns can't be brought up? The fact that they can't even be brought up in a public forum of any kind, or of most kinds, is very scary. And then you have the FDA executives or commissioners saying, well, we don't know unless we put them in the kids, so we got to, don't quote me directly on that, but something along those lines, right? The next thing is that quote-unquote whistleblowers, or rather informants, plan to play a key role in enforcing Biden's most far-reaching vaccine mandate, as OSHA does not have an army of inspectors, according to CBS. OSHA urges workers to bring unsafe or unhealthy working conditions to the attention of their employers, if possible, or file a confidential safety complaint with OSHA. Interesting. Real funny how OSHA's abilities to limit the complaints of the vaccine side effects have been suppressed. But pertaining to this, it's no problem? Give me a fucking break. I'm sorry. And by the way, I apologize for the profanity, but it's not even about Republican, Democrat, anti-vaccine, pro-vaccine. It's not about that. It's just about consistency. Where's the consistency? It's simple, at least in my eyes. And if I'm missing something, please let me know. The next thing is that China's Navy is now the largest maritime battle force on Earth, surpassing the U.S., according to a new Pentagon report. And a third aircraft carrier is set to sail as soon as February of next year. Again, it's tit for tat. Chinese, military games, things like that. The only people that suffer are the innocent people in between. And if, for those that are members, you've seen the recent Let's Get Banned early release about how, again, we see that war in a lot of ways is a stage and a theater. Because if they really wanted to mess with each other, they could cut those underwater cables that connect the banking infrastructures of the world. But God forbid they mess with the banking. But, it's okay if we can blow shit up and destroy innocent people's lives. You see? The next thing is that Pfizer pharma giant posts a, quote, conspiracy-themed meme on Twitter, but disabled public replies. Yeah, it was ridiculous. Basically saying it was like a visual comic illustration, so essentially saying the conspiracy theorists are nut jobs. Whatever. The next thing is that Pelosi's January 6th Select Committee subpoenas 10 more former administration officials, including Kayleigh McEnany and Stephen Miller. It's tit for tat. Again, just like I said, when Steve Bannon was found in contempt of Congress, notice how 2 days after, Bannon put out that teaser trailer with him and Epstein. That's him saying to those Congress members, I got dirt on you, and I got way more than you might know, because Jeff told me stuff. That's Bannon's way of sort of saying that. It's a chess game. So, again, the And by the way, people might say, oh, they don't issue subpoenas for nothing. If it's a game, sometimes they do. Again, they want us looking at that Republican-Democrat label. Let's look at that externally. It's humans playing games with other humans and using the media, the press, and the everyday working average Joe and Jane, so to speak, metaphor for man and woman, obviously, to get riled up, but continue working. Continue their 9 to 5. You see what I'm saying? That's what they don't want you to break out of. The next thing is that France plans to build new nuclear reactors for the first time in decades, President Macron announces. Look, it could be having to do with the Auckland thing. It could have to do with things that we don't even know about because the media, whether international, national, or what have you, has not reported on it. So this is pure speculation as to why this is being done, truthfully. I mean, again, I don't trust anyone who says otherwise in terms of, oh, this is the exact reason why. And even if it is, there's got to be other alterations other than that, if you want to know my opinion. The next thing is that the Pfizer CEO said we are targeted by, quote, a lot of dark organizations, and we're getting briefings from the CIA and the FBI. And he also said people who spread misinformation on the COVID vaccines are criminals, end quote, according to CNBC. And he also said have cost millions of lives. Don't get me started. Let's look more into, and I'm not going to touch that. Because it just riles me up so much, and I feel like it's a waste of breath, time, even for you folks who are listening or watching. The next thing is that Lithuania has declared a state of emergency on the border with Belarus, effective from midnight last night, as of the day I'm recording this. Again, they want to keep their border safe and things like that. I understand that. For me, it's quite simple. I don't see what the issue is here. And again, if there's people stuck on the other side that live in Lithuania, this is one of the unfortunate issues and consequences of having potentially unstable regions anywhere in the world. The next thing is that China's military has conducted combat readiness patrol near Taiwan Straits in response to, quote, secessionist activities, end quote, according to the communist state media. Yeah, bullshit. Anyways, I mean, it's you can make up anything. I mean, it's like a license to kill. The next thing is that Gavin Newsom's deputy claims the California governor, Newsom himself, who is a climate crisis advocate, could not make it to the COP26 climate summit because he has young kids. The reason I wanted to report this story, folks, is because he disappeared literally hours after he got his booster. And again, he's the one who kept saying, get the booster, get the booster. A lot of people are saying maybe he's sick. And here's the thing. If he's experiencing side effects from the booster, he's not going to want to show that publicly because it's going to look bad and it's going to discourage the public. So he's been on national TV every single day for the past 18 months, I think. And right after he got that booster, nope, no more press conferences, temporarily on hold. Come on, what are the odds? You don't need to be a conspiracy theorist to see this. The next thing is that a man was reportedly found shot in the head at the reflecting pool on the mall near the Lincoln Memorial in D.C. The reason I wanted to bring this up, folks, is because we can talk about innocent people dying every day, but the tension is everywhere. If this is not a metaphor literally or, an example, literally or metaphorically for how the tension is getting closer and closer to home, so to speak, meaning, the political capital of America. What does that tell you? You know what I'm saying? The next thing is that there is a puzzling heart disease in football. An unusually large number of professional and amateur football players have collapsed recently, according to the Berliner Zeitung. I'm leaving that there. Take that as you will, folks. The next thing is that French health authority HAS no longer recommends the Moderna COVID vaccine for people under 30 years of age. And again, my point exactly as to what I was saying a few minutes back. The next thing is that the Biden White House tells businesses to proceed with the vaccine mandate despite a court-ordered pause, according to CNBC. I believe this was the Fifth Circuit Court, if I'm not mistaken, that said to pause this because it is overreaching. And they said, nah, just go on anyways, because my God, if Trump did that, again, we got to be consistent. The left would have a field day. They'd go nuts, like more nuts than they've ever done. They'd say, look at this authoritarian push, but the Biden administration does it and what, nothing? Let's call it as it is, right? Now, we could also argue, the Biden administration is saying this because, they know that they're going to win this case against the Fifth Circuit Court judges that ruled on this, but yeah, but go through the legal process. Don't say, just go ahead and do it. We can argue you're undermining democracy in that regard, in pure theory, if you want to talk like that. So, the next thing is that Saudi Arabia's blanket ban on Lebanese imports is another blow to Lebanon's crippled economy, and some fear the squeeze could get worse. Look, it's possible. I don't rule this out. I'm not an analyst or an expert economist, and even then we're finding those people don't even know what they're talking about anyways. But I gotta say, folks, I mean, I feel like this is a perfect example of an article, again, written by Al Jazeera, just trying to fill the space because it's a slow news day. That's just my opinion. But look, at the end of the day, I'm not saying they made the story up. I'm just saying, Sometimes they'll sensationalize for the sake of just having to get clicks that day. The next thing is that there's an uneasy calm in Baghdad after assassination attempt on the Iraqi prime minister. Protesters near Baghdad's green zone still dispute the election results days after a failed assassination attempt on Mustafa al-Kadhimi. Again, it's what the people want. It's really about that. Everything else is just a sideshow in terms of, really, technically speaking, an assassination attempt on the prime minister, things like this. You could argue, Dave, it's a symbolic that, it's a symbolic representation that, look, the people are trying to go for our country's leader. Yeah, well, to be fair, the West really helped destabilize Iraq. So, I'm going to be honest with you. We here in the West got to take some of that blame. Like I said, we got to be consistent. We have to be consistent. And again, if the people feel it's a farce election or something like this, again, they have to listen to the people. But Iraq has a lot of problems before they can even get to considering having a conversation about that, in my opinion. I hope I'm wrong. But the next thing is that an aid group claims that 4,000 to 5,000 Afghans are crossing into Iran daily. The Norwegian Refugee Council says as many as 300,000 Afghans have crossed the border since the Taliban took power in August. Again, the question becomes, do we get involved or not? Even again with Norwegian Refugee Council. They say, that 4,000 to 5,000 Afghans have crossed into Iran daily. Do we get involved or not? Is it our problem or not? And I genuinely ask that. I'm not trying to be sarcastic. The next thing is that Iran frees the Vietnamese tanker seized after the U.S. Navy confrontation. The IRGC said it has thwarted an attempt by the U.S. Navy to steal Iranian oil by force in October. Again, we hear of the operations that don't do well. We don't hear of the ones that do well. So I'm not trying to take the side of the West, but we got to be vigilant. The next thing is that the family of a murdered Kenyan woman sues the UK army to demand answers. A British soldier reportedly confessed to killing Agnes Wanjiru and showed comrades where he dumped her body. Yeah, no. The family has a right here. That's bad. That's real bad. The next thing, that's my opinion at least. The next thing is that the UN says Ethiopia has detained 72 drivers working for WFP. WFP stands for the World Food Program. The Ethiopian Human Rights Commission says that they're worried about mass arrests of Tigrayans, but the government denies ethnic profiling. I don't believe any single thing from either side unless I'm on the ground, to tell you folks the truth. Because a lot of these NGOs and UN programs, they're fronts in a lot of regards. Sometimes they're legit with a little bit of spies mixed in there, sort of like, disinformation. You mix the truth with lies, so to speak. That's why I don't trust it. It's not that I don't believe it, I don't trust it. Simple. The next thing is that Bangladesh sentenced former Chief Justice to 11 years in jail. Surendra Kumar Sinha headed the Supreme Court when it ruled in 2017 that Parliament cannot sack judges, a move that was hailed by lawyers. Okay, I guess the people didn't want that, and presuming this process was legitimate and there was no incursion respects to some type of corruption, so be it. The next thing is that Cuba has accused the U.S. of destabilization ahead of opposition protests. Cuba saw rare public protests in July over rising living costs, food shortages, and the continuing U.S. embargo. Yeah. Don't get me started on this, folks. I mean, the Cuba's also accused the U.S. of sort of fomenting their own sort of Cuban Twitter to sort of create a coup, if you will, or rile things up relative to the masses of the people protesting. Again, get out of there. Let them do their thing as a country. Like, that's just my opinion. I know it's more complicated than that, but Jesus Christ, how long has the West been involved with these embargoes on Cuba? And these sanctions and all these things. Anyways, the next thing is that Panama's ex-president gets a second acquittal in a phone tapping case. Ricardo Martinelli was accused of wiretapping more than 150 people, including politicians and journalists. Listen, 150 is a lot of people. If you can prove it, then okay. But again, if the legal process was done correctly, there was no involvement of corruption, and he's been acquitted, that's the way it goes. That's just, again, that's the system that the people like, presuming the people like that system, and that's how it is. The next thing is that Mexico's President AMLO, proposes a global anti-poverty plan in his United Nations speech. The plan would help 750 million people who live on less than $2 a day have dignified lives, the Mexican president says. Good. It's good to see, but let's see if this actually translates into something legitimate. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Right? That's truly what it is. These guys can call for anything and everything as many times as they want, but what's really going to happen? The next thing is that Mexico's anti-money laundering chief resigns amid scandal. This is ironic. Authorities found $35,000 in cash on a private plane carrying guests to Santiago Nieto's wedding in Guatemala. I mean, kind of just a little giggle at that. The next thing is that Boris Johnson insists that the UK is not corrupt amid a row over MPs' second jobs. This is hilarious. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the UK is not a corrupt country as Parliament is embroiled in scandal over some of the MPs' second jobs. It comes after Johnson last week tried and failed to change the rules on sanctioning errant MPs when another Tory MP, Owen Paterson, was found to have lobbied ministers for 2 firms that had him on the payroll. Yeah, they're supposed to represent the people, and they're getting bribed up the ass. Yeah, part of my profanity. Yeah, you don't think that's a conflict of interest? Give me a break. Come on. It's just like the guys that were at the head of the FDA are now on the board of Pfizer. What? That's not a come on. That's not a conflict of interest? Are you kidding me? This is what people say when it's right in front of our faces relative to the dissemination of propaganda and constant creation and need for division to distract us from what's really happening. The next thing is that students defend protest against Israeli ambassador at LSE. The British Home Secretary says she was disgusted by the treatment of Zipi Hotoveli, who was jeered after she attended a debate at the London School of Economics. Yeah, this is, again, going back to the whole Israel-Palestine thing. So I'm just going to leave that there. I don't mean to ramble on about that, especially as we're wrapping up with some final topics pertaining to what's going on globally. The next thing is that the Swedish Prime Minister has resigned, paving the way for a potential female leader. Stefan Löfven has resigned in a long-planned move, with Magdalena Andersson on track to become the country's first female prime minister. Sure. Again, assuming it's legitimate, by all means. I got nothing wrong with that, personally. The next thing is that the Myanmar military has been accused of blocking aid to displaced civilians. Fortify Rights says Myanmar army may have committed war crimes in arresting aid workers and destroying food stocks. Again, I feel very similar to this about Afghanistan, relative to the opinion of Afghanistan. Should we be involved or not? Whether things are happening in a good way or a bad way, should we get involved or not? Genuine question. It's not for me to say, right? The next thing is that Afghanistan's ex-finance minister has blamed the government's fall on corrupt officials who invented, quote, ghost soldiers and took payments from the Taliban. Khalid Payenda told the BBC, this is the Afghanistan's ex-finance minister, told the BBC that most of the 300,000 troops and police on the government's books did not exist. He said the phantom personnel or the ghost personnel were added to official lists so that generals could pocket their wages. What a surprise. And of course, the military-industrial complex guys and the United States Army and all that, the generals, they're going to turn a blind eye because they're getting rich too. Everyone's getting rich. Again, who are the only people that suffer? The everyday people, the innocent ones. The generals got rich on both sides. We could argue. Well, guaranteed the Afghan side, but the contractors got rich for sure, skimming off the top, pocketing the profits, you name it. So take that as you will. The Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, said he warned Twitter boss Jack Dorsey about political arrest in the U.S. just a day before the deadly January 6th riot. Okay, I don't want to. Just a day before January 6th. We're going to leave it at that. And I say that because, again, not that I'm saying nothing, people didn't get hurt or people didn't die there, but again, it's very conflictual with respects to what happened there. So it's not for me to say either or. The next, and I quote, I warned him his platform was allowing a coup to be staged, end quote, Prince Harry told Wired, the Wired tech forum in the U.S. Prince Harry also went on to say, quote, that email was sent the day before and then it happened and I haven't heard from him since, end quote, the Duke said. He was speaking at a session discussing whether social media was contributing to misinformation and online hatred. Okay, my thing is this. I've taken a very relatively new stance on this, and I'll end it at this and let you folks think about this and ponder this. And maybe I'm missing context. If I am, please tell me if this is a very simpleton concept here. But my thought process lately is, okay, everyone in the world has phones, right? People can call each other. There's no governments don't ban people from calling other people. But they're doing this with text messages, with social media accounts. And I get it, the argument of their private companies, yada, yada. Okay, let's put that aside for a second. So if people didn't get together using Twitter or Facebook to do this coup on the 6th, alleged coup on the 6th, they would have just called each other via phone. Now, the argument could be made, to play devil's advocate, to be fair, that, people would say, oh, well, Dave, for example, it's easier to communicate on Facebook and Twitter than for people to call each other. I get that. But do you see the principle the point I'm trying to make here? So anyone who's a potential extremist from either side, far left, far right, should we start banning their phones now from calling people? Like, how much is enough? Where's the line? So, again, with that being said, folks, thank you so much for your patience and for this sort of wrap-up of the news of the last 48 hours, and we'll catch all of you very, very soon. Cheers.